Hey everyone, and welcome to another knife review here at The Last of Knives. Today we're looking at another knife designed by Dyllan Mallery, the CJRB Centros. It's one of those knives I wanted to check out mainly because of all the positive feedback I've heard from others, which was for many good reasons. It's super inexpensive, it has a comfortable ergonomic design, and it's very aesthetically pleasing. So in this video we'll be talking about some of the knife specs and features, and near the end I'll give it a TLOK rating by judging the knife on a scale through -100 to 100. So let's get right into it by taking a quick look at the basics first. This particular model has carbon fiber scales which just look amazing in the right light. The Centros is available in 4 different versions. For instance, the Centros with gray/blue G10, black and green G10 scales. There's also one with green canvas micarta, although that does get a bit more expensive. You're adding about $16 more on that one, which comes at $58 USD, compared to the carbon fiber model, which is currently available for purchase at the link in the description for $41.38 USD or 52.76 Canadian. It has a drop point blade that's made of D2 steel, finished off with a tumbled finish. It has a deep carry clip that gives you tip up only with left and right configurations. As you can see, the deep carry clip allows it to be practically invisible in the pocket, although it is a little shiny, which sort of makes it less inconspicuous. Changing it to a tumbled finish similar to the blade would help keep it a little more discreet when carried. Also, it doesn't have recessed screws, so it's pretty likely your pants will get caught. So instead of your usual lanyard hole which is drilled through the scales, the Centros has a more unique design. The lanyard hole is actually located between the scales and liners on the back of the knife. For the hardware, body is T6 and pivot is T8. As far as dimensions go, the Centros has a blade length of 3.54 inches with a closed length of 4.72 inches, bringing the overall length to 8.31 inches. The cutting edge comes at 3.54 inches with a blade thickness of 0.13 inches, a handle thickness of 0.53 inches, and this knife gives you a weight of 4 ounces, which is kind of over my preference of 3.5 ounces, but still not a major complaint at all. The handle gives plenty of room, obviously with my small hands, however it is a little too big for me. It's better off with people with large or XL glove size hands. Unfortunately, the blade size is not legally suitable in areas restricted of blades over 3 inches, as this one is 3.5, so this is definitely not a small knife. And if we were to compare it to another similar size knife, for example the Ontario Rat 1, which is also a pretty large knife, you can see they are very similar in terms of overall length. As far as how comfortable the handle is, it does give plenty of room. The thickness of the handle allows the knife to fully fill your palms. However, in terms of size, like I mentioned, it is a bit too large for my hands. As far as my natural grip goes, so where my fingers are placed naturally around the handle, you can see the thumb jimping is a little too far up. So the knife fits in my hand but isn't really built for my hand, if that makes any sense. It also has some contouring along the edges, so you will not feel any sharp edges when holding the knife. Really appreciate how Dyllan Mallery designed these handles, which very much complements the shape of the hand. The thumbstick action is quick and satisfying, as since this knife runs on bearings, it's super easy to deploy without any wrist movement or thumb pressure. This is a knife you can definitely fidget with all day, despite the fact that it has a liner lock. And it does have a solid lockup with little to no blade play, and the centering is pretty damn centered. Again, you got that D2 steel for the blade, which is a good steel especially at its price. It's an ideal steel for simple tasks that center around common household work or EDC work, for example cutting ropes or packages. It holds its edge well along with some good toughness. On the clip side of the blade shows Dyllan's logo and also the markings. The high flat grind allows it to slice through things easily, making it a good food prep knife as well. The blade has a good thickness that comes down to a pretty pointy tip and a good edge. As far as aesthetics go, this knife is really pleasing to look at. It's the slenderness and the pointiness of the blade that really drove me into getting this knife, as well as the carbon fiber scales. I usually don't like slender knives, but this one is just an exception. There's just something about the blade shape and handle that I really gravitate towards, so props to Dyllan for another great design. So let's give it a TLOK rating, and starting off with the category ergonomics, I can say the fit and feel certainly is one of the knife's aspects that I really appreciate. Although it is a bit too large for my hands, the handles fill my palms perfectly, and when I do manage to reach the jimping, it prevents my finger from slipping really well. So I'll give the ergonomics an 8 out of 10. Compared to a knife with a thin blade like the Spyderco Delica 4, the Centros has a thicker blade to handle tougher work, however it does come down to a pretty darn thin edge. It has D2 steel, which is, like I mentioned, a good steel, so I'll give it a 6 out of 10 in the blade category. Since you have a deep carry clip, this knife basically disappears in your pocket, although it is pretty conspicuous because of that shiny finish on the clip. Also, there's a possibility of your pants getting caught when taking this out of your pocket since it doesn't have recessed screws, so I decided to give this a 5 out of 10 in pocket rideability. In terms of how viable this knife is for EDC, it can cut, it performs well, and it can handle tough work, so I'll just give it an 8 out of 10. Now for the fidget factor of the knife, because it runs on bearings, you get that butter smooth action and quick deployment. However, it doesn't really have the potential to be as fidgety as other knives with the Benchmade Axis lock for instance, but it is still pretty fidgety for a liner lock, so I'll give it a 6 for the category fidget friendliness. Furthermore, not only does it have nice action, but it also has easy deployment. You don't need to apply tons of pressure to open this since the detent was done really well, so I'll give it a 7 out of 10 in action. As far as quality goes, the blade centering is dead centered, the scales and full stainless steel liners fit perfectly without any part of the knife hanging over, and there's also no blade play. Good fit and finish, so I'll give it an 8 out of 10. This knife is definitely the bang for your buck since it has greater things than what you pay for example the great ergonomics, a good steel, and of course that nice action. Thus it gets a 9 out of 10 in value. One of the main selling points that I was drawn into is of course its aesthetic appearance. I find the slenderness of the knife, the shape of the blade, and the handle to be very attractive. For those reasons, it gets a 7 out of 10. Lastly, the size of the knife is honestly the one thing I wouldn't really like about the knife. Obviously, this is my opinion, but I don't really dig a big knife for EDC. If they were to make a mini version of this, then it would absolutely become one of my top favorite budget EDC knives right then and there. But since this is a little too big for my preference, I'll give it a 5 in dimensions. Other than that, the weight is alright, maybe a bit over my taste, but still. If we add all those points up, we get a final and total score of 69 out of 100, making it the highest rated knife on the TLOK rating. Here it is on the chart compared to other knives. So basically, those are all my thoughts on the CJRB Centros, another great design by Dyllan Mallery. It has all the things you need for a good EDC, except for the size in my opinion. The amount of grade is so worth the money you pay for. I would in fact buy a $60 Centros without hesitation. But that's basically it for me. If you have any questions about the CJRB Centros, make sure to let me know in the comments below. Also consider hitting that subscribe button, like button, and also that notification bell if you hadn't already so you know when the next video is up. As always, thanks for watching, and until next time.